Thank you very much, Tom. I want to thank my colleagues, Senator Matera, Senator Lanza, Senator Helming, who had to get to another meeting. We have several of our colleagues who couldn't be here today. They were at the Health Committee meeting this morning, where they were asking questions of the acting Department of Health Commissioner. There's going to be a Finance Committee happening, I think, currently, potentially, or very shortly, to also ask the acting health commissioner further questions. And then that confirmation will be, we expect, at some point this week. So our conference is doing our job on that front, but we obviously are here to, again, the takeaway needs to be we need to move to guidance. That is why you have a health department. They can put out guidance. New Yorkers are smart enough to make the decisions that are right for their families, just as Floridians are, just as people in Tennessee are, just as people in other states are and have been. We trust New Yorkers. If you're issuing mandates, that means you don't trust New Yorkers. That's the only reason you'd be mandating something. We trust them to make the right decision, especially at this point in the pandemic. We need to be contributing to solutions, not making the problems worse. And that's what this conference is here today to talk about. I'll take questions on topic first. I'm sure there may be some off-topic questions. So on-topic questions first, and then we'll move to off-topic.
Any concerns with the confirmation for Commissioner Bassett going forward? What issues and questions do you have?
So, yes, I do have concerns. You know, for a long time, Nick, we discussed this yesterday. We always want to be fair-minded as elected leaders. When you have confirmations, you want to look at a resume, credentials. But the truth is, as someone mentioned yesterday, Dr. Zucker had a pretty good resume. He had pretty good credentials. And he was an unmitigated disaster. And he misled the legislature and the people of New York. And he did so on behalf of his master, former Governor Cuomo. So you have to also look at actions. You have to look at policies. She's the acting commissioner. So we already have a little bit of a preview of what she has been doing and what she is going to look to continue to do. And I think that's given our conference pause on her confirmation. And I think you're going to see that in the questions, both in the Health Committee and in the Finance Committee today. And then we'll see, I'm sure there'll be robust discussion on the floor.
Senator, would you, if there was a test out option, who should pay for that? Should the state?
For the workers, for healthcare workers? Yeah. So, look, I think at this point, these are folks who, they're taking care of our loved ones in a hospital. I think the state would have an obligation, but I also think that, that could be shared. The hospital could fund some of that. But I think there needs to be a third option. 34,000 workers are gone. They're out of a job. We had a health staffing crisis before the pandemic. So I just don't know how we can be sincere about when we talk about a bed shortage. Make no mistake, it's not a bed shortage. It is a staffing shortage. There's plenty of beds. We don't have the people to staff the bed. That's the issue. And so whatever that answer is, we can have that dialogue, and obviously there's going to be public dollars that have to pay for those tests. But I think the public would be fine with that if they knew there'd be more healthcare workers to take care of us in the hospital, not just for COVID. People still go to the hospital, shockingly, for other things as well. They still go for heart attacks. They still go for other illnesses. They still go for cancer treatments. They still go for dialysis. They still go for other things. And we are in the wrong position in New York State. We are not in a position to shed 34,000 jobs in the healthcare workforce to other states. We do a good job of losing jobs to other states all on our own without doing these kinds of things. This is it's just not working. The data does not back it up, and that's why I think we're looking for a test out option or some other option to keep these folks employed and doing the thing that they love to do, that they want to do. You don't become a nurse to get rich. You're being a nurse because you care about helping people.
Any other questions?
That's on topic. Any off topic? Off topic.
Earlier this afternoon, you had people rallying already to funding for additional student worker relief last year. Just curious what your response is to that and where you stand again.
Sure, sure. Spoiler alert: we're going to be against it wholeheartedly, and I say that, and I appreciate you. Obviously, we were very outspoken about it last year, and then we find out. So we were against it because it's just fundamentally wrong. And I just can't stress that enough on behalf of our conference. Fundamentally wrong that we're going to lay aside $2.1 billion for unemployment benefits to those who are here, non-U.S. citizens, and we laid out a couple $1 million for veterans, Dwyer post-traumatic stress services. So American New Yorkers, citizens who defended and fought for this country, were worth $4 million, and non-U.S. citizens were worth $2.1 billion. Show me your budget, and I'll show you your priorities. That was their priority. We were against it. Then we find out, though, not shockingly, that there's all this fraud. There's fraud. Who would imagine there'd be fraud in a program, $2.1 billion to those who are not U.S. citizens? And there was. And their response was, well, we got to put more money into it. And so, my colleagues, they're going to continue to push for that program. Our conference will continue to oppose that program. Look, the truth is, if we can get people back to, that was a pandemic-related program. I would argue we are on the other side of this pandemic. So just on that justification alone, we shouldn't do it. Because we should be moving past where people are unemployed. There's plenty of jobs out there for people to go to work. There's plenty, in fact, there's not enough workers for the jobs. So the argument that somebody needs more unemployment benefits, on its face, I find objection to, but especially non-U.S. citizens, maybe some of that money can go to New Yorkers, U.S. citizens who desperately need it in several other aspects of state government. That's where I would like, and I think our conference would like to see that money go to. Certainly no more programs like that.
They also are pushing for making unemployment benefits permanent, like a fund to
Sure.
right. So not pandemic related, also was
Sure.
you
And you're talking just New Yorkers in general on that front, right? For undocumented. I think it's great work if you can get it, right? You know what I mean? I think it goes to show you that really it wasn't about the pandemic. All these things, the driver's licenses, the unemployment benefits, voting rights in New York City, I have said all along, and I think this is very important to understand, all these things are really about conveying de facto citizenship to people who are not citizens. New York State, of course, like every state, we don't confer citizenship. That's a federal thing. But this is a backdoor way to confer. We'll give them voting rights, you'll get unemployment benefits, you'll get identification, you'll get everything without being a citizen, because we can't do that. But we're going to give you everything else, de facto citizenship. And it waters down, and it's an insult to citizens of this country. In fact, it's the greatest insult to people who came over from other countries and stood in line and waited for years and took the test and went to the classes. It's a real slap in the face to them. And it makes me upset, and they should be upset when they see that. It's completely wrong. I would rather them just say it is what it is. Don't use the pandemic. Don't use some, Trump or the Republicans or the weather or anything else. Just say what you're really doing, which is you want to convey citizenship for people who aren't citizens, which is not a function of New York State government anyways, and I think it's wrong, and I think most New Yorkers would tell you it's wrong.
For Senator Lanza, from a code's perspective, what do you think of the budget?
From a what perspective?
From a code's perspective, what do you think about the budget's potential impacts in this coming year?
Well, I think the leader has pointed out that we've known what their priorities are, the other side of the aisle. And, Governor Hochul is just more of the same. There's no emphasis in terms of public safety. There's no prioritizing getting our students back into the classrooms. In fact, what we see in that budget and from the policies of this administration is the people who have the most power and keep grabbing more power over the lives of our students and our citizens want yet even more power. And they're the last people, in my estimation, our estimation, who really should have that power, because they've really yielded in a way that has hurt this state. So there are more giveaway programs. The cost of living in New York State, if you look at that budget, is going up. People keep asking what they're getting for that money. I think if you're a New Yorker, it's a fair question to ask. I pay more than anyone else around the country, and I look around, I don't seem to be getting as much as people around the country are getting. So sadly, Governor Hochul is doubling down on policies that are driving New Yorkers away from this state.
Also for Senator Oberacher, the expansion we talked about before of broadband into rural areas, as far as infrastructure investments go, do you think it's sufficient as far as what we have seen preliminarily in the budget?
Hope springs eternal. The fact that it has been at least addressed and there has been some effort put forward and some money allocated for it, absolutely. Now we got to get serious about it and make it happen, right? That last mile that we all talk about, that last mile connect needs to happen. So, I'm encouraged. I'm willing to kind of see what it takes to get us to that last mile, but we got to make that happen.
Last question?
If I can,
A two-parter. It's always the last question that's the hardest.
the first is on bail reform.
Sure.
The governor approved about, I think, $10 million for pretrial services outside of New York City. What was your reading of that and how much money she put for that in the scope of the budget?
Sure.
And then the second question is on the
For the farmers? Okay.
just whether you reviewed it.
So, with regard to the public safety and the budget and the pretrial services, but also there was $224 million for to address gun violence, or $224 million is a lot of dollars. I guess, when I look at the public safety portion of the budget, so nothing about bail, changing bail back, getting rid of cashless bail, or nothing about prosecuting people that use illegal firearms, or changing which crimes are bail eligible versus not. We have ID cards for prisoners, which I don't know if the COs don't know who they are, or I don't know why they would need ID cards in jail. But we're going to do free IDs, non-driver IDs for those in prison. That was under the public safety portion. Then there was $224 million to address gun violence. I'd really like to see what that entails. I mean, that's a lot of money. How are you addressing that gun violence? Is that some massive gun buyback program? What is the plan there? The money for the pretrial. I mean, again, all of this stuff, all of this money, I feel like she's sort of moving around the edges without addressing the real meat of what's going on. And the funny part is that doesn't even cost any money. You just got to change the law to make it actually so that police officers and DAs and judges can keep people who are committing crimes in jail if they feel that that's important. So that's the public safety portion of the budget raises just as many questions as I think it answers, or more. The tax credit. We had a press conference back home last week, and what I heard from farmers who were there, they said that the issue with the tax credit is this, without knowing the full details yet, is that the tax credit they'll be able to take it next year, but they'll have to pay the overtime this year. So it's a cash flow issue for a lot of our farms, right? Even if it is a 1-for-1, or even if it does offset the increase, it won't offset the increase when they have to pay it. And for a lot of farms, the reality is a lot of small farms in New York, it is just, they are living week to week, season to season, and the issue would be, well, if I get the credit next year, can I get to next year with a 40-hour work week, overtime threshold, if that's what comes down?